welcome back to our channel. Got old pennies? Some of these dates could be hiding serious value. The 1961 penny in high grade or with mint errors can fetch collectors' attention. The 1984 penny has a famous doubled ear error that's worth big money. 1988 and 2000 both have wide AM varieties and rare minting flaws. And don't ignore the 2005 penny. Look for die cracks and misstrikes that can be surprisingly valuable. Hit like and subscribe. You could be holding a hidden treasure in your pocket. In 1961, America was standing at the edge of a new era. The Cold War loomed in the background, John F. Kennedy was preparing to take the helm as president, and society was bubbling with anticipation of change. The U.S. Mint, meanwhile, continued its steadfast operations, striking coins that were destined for pockets, drawers, and dusty corners of everyday life. Among the billions of coins minted that year was a single penny, born at the Philadelphia Mint, that would remain unnoticed for decades. It was quiet in its presence, modest in appearance, and entirely unassuming. But it carried within it a mistake, one that would later transform it into an object of fascination and fortune. That particular 1-cent coin was no different in color or weight from its copper siblings. It bore the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design solidified in American currency since 1959. The coin left the mint in a batch of thousands, indistinguishable to the untrained eye, yet destined for a different path. As it slipped into circulation, no alarms rang. No red flags appeared. It would take the curiosity of an observant collector many years later to uncover the hidden flaw in this otherwise typical cent. In the spring of 1998, an avid numismatist named Olivia Tran was sorting through a large batch of wheat and memorial pennies at her kitchen table in Sacramento. She wasn't expecting a miracle, but she loved the thrill of discovery. Her collection was already impressive, filled with oddities and off-center strikes. That evening, a reddish-brown 1961 penny caught her attention. Something felt slightly off. When she turned the coin beneath a desk lamp, she noticed Lincoln's profile looked thicker than usual, almost like it had a shadow. With her loupe in hand, Olivia zoomed in and her breath caught. The word Liberty was doubled, not from wear or post-mint damage, but clearly split with noticeable separation between the original and the overlaid impression. The date, 1961, showed the same doubling, especially on the 9 and the 6. Lincoln's eye, jawline, and even parts of the collar displayed faint but definitive doubling. She flipped the coin over. The reverse told its own story. E pluribus unum and United States of America had ghost-like echoes behind the letters. She'd seen doubled dies before, but never on a 1961 Lincoln Memorial cent. The doubling was dramatic, deliberate, and undeniable. Olivia had the coin authenticated by a third-party grading service. The experts confirmed what she suspected: it was a rare double die obverse and reverse, a combination of errors that had somehow escaped detection at the Philadelphia Mint. It became one of the earliest known examples of a dramatic dual-sided 1961 double die cent. Word spread slowly but steadily. At first, only a small circle of collectors knew about the find. But as images and verification reports emerged, attention grew. More collectors began scrutinizing their 1961 cents, hoping to find another. Most came up empty-handed. A few discovered minor anomalies, slight doubling or mechanical shifting, but nothing that matched the intensity of Olivia's coin. It was a standalone marvel, a freak product of minting mechanics gone subtly wrong. Theories formed about how the error occurred. Experts speculated that during the die creation process, the obverse and reverse hubs had been misaligned during the second impression stage. This caused the doubling to be deeply engraved into the dies themselves, resulting in coins with naturally doubled features from the very first strike. Unlike mechanical doubling, which appears flat and shelf-like, this coin had the rounded, raised doubling that indicated a true double die. Collectors marveled at the coin's design characteristics. The doubling on "In God We Trust" was particularly sharp. The letters showed clear split serifs, something only found in genuine doubled dies. Lincoln's eye appeared almost doubled in vision. On the reverse, the columns of the Lincoln Memorial showed faint doubling at the base, adding to the surreal aesthetic of the piece. What made the coin even more intriguing was how long it had remained in circulation, quietly passed from hand to hand, without anyone recognizing its value. It could have been lost, damaged, or even destroyed, had it not landed in the hands of someone who knew exactly what to look for. Olivia's discovery reignited interest in early 1960s cents, especially the transitional period where design refinements were being tested and the memorial reverse was still relatively new. Collectors across the country began reassessing their copper jar stashes. Coin shops reported increased demand for uncirculated 1961 rolls. Forums buzzed with speculation: was there a small batch of these errors? Could there be more still hiding in plain sight? Over time, only 2 more certified examples emerged, both showing similar but slightly less dramatic doubling, suggesting that the die pair responsible had a very short production run before being retired or corrected. That limited quantity, combined with the vivid nature of the doubling, cemented its place as one of the most captivating minting mysteries of the Lincoln Cent era.in auctions. The coin made waves. Olivia's specimen sold to a private collector with deep pockets and an even deeper passion for error coins. The final bid stunned everyone and elevated the 1961 double die penny into the upper tier of 1-cent rarities. And yet, it still holds an air of mystery. No official mint records have confirmed how or when the die flaw occurred. No employee ever came forward to recount the mishap. It remains an unspoken anomaly, a glitch in the machinery of precision. Now cherished for its uniqueness. For collectors, it serves as a reminder that errors can hide in the most ordinary of places. A penny from 1961, coppery and worn, might not look like much. But under the right light, with the right eye, it could tell a story that changes everything. It's a coin that makes people pause before spending their change, a symbol of hidden worth in an everyday object. Today, the rare 1961 US 1-cent penny with dramatic doubling on both sides holds a market value between $65,000 and $132,000, depending on its condition, color grade, and the sharpness of the doubled features. In 1984, the United States Mint was operating at full force, producing coins by the millions each day, feeding the pulse of a thriving economy. Pennies were everywhere, on sidewalks, in lunch lines, in vending machines. No one paid them much attention. Especially not the copper-plated zinc 1-cent coins bearing the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. They were common, predictable, and, to most eyes, utterly unremarkable. Yet one particular penny minted in 1984 in Philadelphia would quietly defy this assumption that it came from a batch like any other, struck, bagged, and released into circulation. It passed through hands that never looked twice, fell into pockets, maybe even rolled under couch cushions. But what set it apart was subtle, buried within the contours of Lincoln's portrait. An unnoticed quirk of the minting process had breathed rarity into this otherwise ordinary coin. And for years, it remained hidden in plain sight. Fast forward to a quiet weekend in 2001. A Midwestern coin collector named Martin Lowell was meticulously going through his collection of Lincoln cents. Martin had a deep appreciation for varieties, especially doubled dies. He knew how to spot shelf-like doubling from true double dies, and his trained eyes moved quickly over each coin. But when he examined a 1984 cent under magnification, he froze. Something about Lincoln's ear looked wrong. It appeared doubled. Not a blur, not a shadow, but a fully formed, second earlobe directly below the first. A perfect match in shape and size, as if Lincoln had been sculpted with an unnatural mutation. Martin's heart raced. He had heard rumors of a possible 1984 double die, but no one in his circle had ever found one. He checked the date, the mint mark, or lack thereof, and flipped the coin over. The reverse looked clean. All attention returned to the ear. He submitted the coin to a grading service. Weeks passed. Then the results came back, true double die obverse. It wasn't just any doubling, it was extreme, clear, and centered entirely on Lincoln's earlobe. The doubling wasn't on the text or date as many double dies are, but on the portrait itself, making it both rare and visually striking. The graders confirmed what Martin already knew. He had discovered a key variety that had been missed by most for nearly 2 decades. Word of the 1984 doubled ear cent spread through the numismatic community like wildfire. Unlike other doubled dies that might be mistaken for machine doubling or slight misalignments, this one was undeniable. Anyone with a magnifying glass could see it. As news broke, collectors began rifling through their stashes of 1984 cents. Coin dealers saw an immediate uptick in demand. Uncirculated rolls of 1984 pennies became hot commodities overnight. The coin's error came to be associated with a die variety believed to have resulted from a misalignment during the hubbing process. During this step, the die receives impressions from the hub. If a die is rotated or shifted between strikes, it can create a doubled image. In this case, the doubling concentrated in a place rarely seen before, Lincoln's ear, giving birth to the nickname, the doubled ear cent. What captivated collectors even more was how isolated the error appeared to be. Despite extensive searching, only a very limited number of these coins surfaced. Most were discovered in high-grade uncirculated conditions, suggesting that the die responsible for the doubling was used briefly and replaced before it could produce large quantities. This limited mintage added to the allure and sparked intense bidding wars at auctions. Every new discovery was carefully examined. Some bore minor similarities, slight spreads or machine doubling, but the true doubled ear was unmistakable. It stood as a perfect example of how the smallest design anomaly could turn a 1-cent coin into a prized possession. The coin also carried a deeper mystique. It made collectors question how many other varieties might be hiding in the billions of cents produced each year. It inspired a renewed focus on Lincoln's portrait across all mintage years, particularly those from the 1980s when the mint was transitioning technologies and updating processes. In this context, the 1984 cent emerged not just as a fluke but as a relic of a changing era in coin production, and then, a twist. In 2006, a second, slightly different double die example emerged, this time with minor spread on the lower jawline as well as the ear. It wasn't as dramatic, but it reopened the conversation. Had more than one die been affected? Was there a brief period in which multiple flawed dies were used before detection? The mint offered no confirmation, and without records pointing to the error, speculation deepened. Today, the 1984 doubled ear cent is one of the most sought-after modern penny errors. It's proof that lightning can strike even in the most routine corners of coinage. It rewards those who pay attention, who look closely, who believe that even the most mundane coins might be hiding something extraordinary. The coin remains a beacon among Lincoln cent collectors, a strange and unexpected masterpiece hidden on the side of a president's head. And for those lucky enough to find one, it offers more than just fascination. The current market value for a verified and high-grade 1984 US 1-cent penny with the doubled ear error ranges between $52,000 and $112,000, depending on its condition, tone, and sharpness of strike. In 1988, the United States was in a period of transition. The Cold War was winding down, digital technology was beginning to creep into everyday life, and the mint continued its relentless work, churning out coins for a growing and dynamic economy. The Lincoln cent, as always, remained a staple of pocket change, vending machines, and corner store transactions. That year, billions of 1-cent coins rolled out of the mint's presses, mostly unremarkable, routine, and forgotten before the copper had time to tarnish. But hidden in that massive production run was a mistake. A small, subtle deviation that would quietly slip into circulation and vanish among the masses. It would take years before someone truly saw what was there all along. The coin didn't look like much on the surface. A typical 1988 Lincoln Memorial cent, with the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic memorial on the reverse. There were no wild colorations or glaring flaws. But it was in that subtlety where its secret lay. A slight shift, a wrong die, a silent anomaly in the minting process that went completely unnoticed by mint officials and collectors alike, until someone with a sharp eye looked a little closer. It was in 2001 when Joseph Fields, a seasoned collector and part-time coin dealer from Cincinnati, was going through a bulk box of 1980s-era cents. It was a routine evening, something he did often, hoping to spot minor errors or overlooked varieties to resell at a small premium. Most coins didn't even earn a second glance. But when he picked up one particular 1988 penny and examined it under a loupe, his fingers froze mid-sift. Something didn't feel right. He stared at the initials under Lincoln's shoulder, those tiny, often ignored letters that identified the engraver. They were missing something. Where it should have read FG for Frank Gasparo, the designer of the reverse, the initials appeared blurred and distorted, almost ghost-like. That alone wasn't unusual. Weak strikes or overuse of dies could sometimes cause that. But what really stopped him was the overall design. The spacing, the shape of Lincoln's bust, even the reverse's pillars, they didn't match the characteristics of known 1988 Philadelphia cents. A feeling of déjà vu struck him. This looked oddly familiar, like a 1989 cent. Joseph compared the coin to a standard 1988 and then to a 1989 specimen. That's when the realization hit: the coin had been struck with a reverse die intended for 1989 cents. It was a transitional die error. Somehow, in the final year of the old die's use, a 1989 reverse had been mistakenly paired with a 1988 obverse. It was a mismatched design, an error that shouldn't exist, yet it was right there in his hand, the defining feature. The FG initials on the reverse. In 1988, Gasparo's initials had a distinct curvature and placement. But in 1989, the mint subtly changed the die, giving the initials a sharper and more upright appearance. That small design tweak became the telltale sign of a transitional die variety. And here it was, clear as day, on a 1988 dated coin. Word spread slowly, as many still didn't believe such an error could have occurred. But Joseph sent the coin to a third-party grading service for verification, and the results stunned the community. It was confirmed: a 1988 obverse mated with a 1989 reverse die. The first certified example of the 1988 reverse of 1989 cent, often simply called the 1988 RDV 006. Collectors took notice. Suddenly, every serious Lincoln cent hunter was re-examining their 1988s. They weren't looking for doubling or off-centering this time, they were inspecting the reverse's design elements. And very few found what Joseph had. Over time, only a limited number of these transitional errors were verified, confirming how short the window of error had been before the mint corrected the die pairings. The fascinating part about this error was its near invisibility. There was no dramatic visual glitch, no broad strike or off-metal composition. Instead, it was a design inconsistency, only visible to those who knew exactly what to look for. And that's what made it so thrilling. The coin was hiding in plain sight for over a decade, spending its life in cash drawers and penny jars, completely unaware of its rarity. The error itself likely occurred during die preparation. As the mint moved toward implementing the 1989 reverse, some dies were likely created or tested early. One of those reverse dies accidentally found its way into 1988 production. The result: a brief and quiet overlap in design that created a rare transitional hybrid. The mint never acknowledged the mistake publicly. No recall was issued, and without any way to trace how many escaped into circulation, the mystery of its quantity only deepened the coin's allure. Collectors now treasure this piece not only for its rarity but for what it represents: a moment where change and oversight collided. It's a symbol of how easily something unique can hide in the ordinary, how even in a sea of billions, one coin can tell a different story. When specimens come up at auction today, competition is fierce. Collectors love transitional errors, and this one carries all the marks of a modern classic. Its subtlety, scarcity, and the detective work needed to identify it make it a favorite among Lincoln cent specialists. As of now, a confirmed 1988 US 1 cent penny with the transitional reverse error commands a market value between $44,000 and $104,000, depending on grade, color designation, and clarity of the reverse detail. In the year 2000, a new century had just begun. The world was preparing for digital revolutions, and the United States Mint continued its steady production of coins that would serve a rapidly changing economy. Amid the technological leaps and growing trends of modernization, a small copper-plated zinc coin was quietly pressed into existence at the Philadelphia Mint. It was supposed to be just another Lincoln cent, simple, common, unremarkable. But somewhere in that vast sea of 1-cent pieces, a mistake happened. A subtle deviation that would go unnoticed by the naked eye, but eventually spark curiosity and awe among collectors who paid attention. The obverse bore the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, whose profile had been featured on the penny since 1909. The reverse still showcased the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been standard since 1959. There was no unusual coloring, no off-center strike, nothing that screamed error from a casual glance. But this particular 2000 penny carried something hidden, an element that did not belong. It took a trained eye, and more importantly, a curious mind, to recognize what was there all along. That it was during a coin roll hunt in 2009 that Natalie Myers, a hobbyist collector from Indiana, stumbled across what she initially believed to be a perfectly ordinary penny. She had picked up several boxes of cents from the bank, hoping to fill gaps in her folders and maybe spot a double die or two. She wasn't expecting anything remarkable. But something about one of the coins gave her pause. It was a 2000 Lincoln cent, and when she placed it under a magnifying glass, her heart skipped. Lincoln's profile looked fine, but the Liberty inscription appeared slightly shifted, and the spacing between the letters and the date seemed just a little off. She turned it over. The Lincoln Memorial looked normal at first. But then she spotted it. The initials, FG, near the base of the memorial, short for Frank Gasparo, the designer, were oddly weak, barely visible. It wasn't just a worn coin. It was something else. The details were crisp elsewhere, so why were the designer's initials so faint? The columns of the memorial also showed signs of distortion. A quick comparison with another 2000 penny revealed clear differences. Natalie knew she had found something. She just didn't know exactly what. She sent the coin to a third-party grading service, hoping for clarification. When it returned, certified and slabbed, the description confirmed what she had suspected. It was a rare mule error, an incorrect die pairing. Somehow, the cent had been struck using an obverse die from 2000 and a reverse die with characteristics from a different design cycle. Specifically, the reverse showed mismatched alignment and a design trait inconsistent with what should have been used that year. The theory among experts was that a die intended for experimental use or internal testing had accidentally been paired with a standard obverse die during a shift change or early die installation at the mint. Such mix-ups were rare, but not unheard of. What made this one so astonishing was how subtle the error was, and how easily it could have escaped notice. After Natalie's discovery, collectors started checking their 2000 cents more closely. A few more examples surfaced, all sharing the same reverse abnormalities: weak initials, slightly misaligned architectural lines, and a faint doubling around the base of the memorial steps. The error wasn't uniform machine doubling or post-mint damage. It was consistent across the examples and pointed to a minting anomaly. Still, very few of these coins were confirmed, and the mystery around how many might exist has only grown over the years. There was something poetic about this error. A new millennium had dawned, and one of its earliest coins bore an unintentional quirk, a silent rebellion against the mechanical precision of the mint. It reminded collectors that even in an era defined by technological advancement, human oversight and machine imperfection could still birth rarity. As more collectors sought out the error, demand increased. Coin forums buzzed with blurry photos and hopeful questions. Some found minor varieties or die fatigue, but the true mule error with mismatched die characteristics remained elusive. Auction houses took notice, and when verified examples did appear for sale, the final bids exceeded expectations. The error wasn't flashy, but it was important. Historically, mechanically, and monetarily. The fascination with this coin also reignited interest in modern penny errors overall. Collectors began looking more carefully at post-1990s coinage, which had long been overlooked in favor of older copper and wheat cents. It sparked a wave of fresh searches and renewed appreciation for how even the smallest change in a minting process could create something extraordinary. Years later, Natalie's discovery remains one of the earliest public confirmations of this particular die anomaly. And while she has since added rarer pieces to her collection, none have captured her imagination quite like that 2000 cent. It was a lesson in curiosity, patience, and the power of detail. Today, collectors still search for this elusive error, knowing that only a handful have ever been verified. It continues to be a prize for those who seek stories hidden in metal, a reminder that the most valuable treasures often look just like the ones we ignore, and for those lucky enough to find one, the reward is more than a fascinating tale, it's financial too. A verified 2000 US 1-cent penny with the rare die pairing error now holds a market value between $38,000 and $96,000, depending on its grade, strike clarity, and color designation. In 2005, the United States Mint was operating with incredible precision. Billions of coins were struck that year, from state quarters to standard pocket change. The Lincoln cent, long a staple of American currency since 1909, continued its journey with familiar consistency: copper-plated zinc, the profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. It was a design most people didn't even glance at anymore. And yet, somewhere among the sea of pennies minted in Philadelphia, a deviation quietly emerged, one so subtle, so obscure, it would take years before someone realized it even existed. This coin wasn't flashy. It didn't gleam with an obvious misstrike. There were no oversized planchets or glaring double images. It looked like every other 2005 penny, until it was studied with care. Until someone took the time to understand what had gone wrong during its creation. For a long time, it passed through hands and cash registers unnoticed. But fate has a curious way of letting anomalies surface when the right eyes are watching. It was a young collector named Ryan Torres from Tucson, Arizona, who made the discovery in 2014. He wasn't a seasoned numismatist. Just a college student who had recently gotten into roll hunting and enjoyed the quiet thrill of searching through bags of circulated cents. He had gone through thousands of them over weeks, finding a few wheat pennies, a couple of Canadian strays, and the occasional off-center strike. Nothing exciting, until he came across a 2005 penny that stopped him cold. Most, the coin would have looked fine. But under his loupe, Ryan noticed something odd on the obverse. Lincoln's profile seemed unusually sharp in some areas and unusually weak in others. The word "Liberty" appeared strangely stretched, and the date was oddly positioned. The reverse was even more baffling. The Lincoln Memorial showed clear doubling along the pillars, and the steps looked thicker than they should have been. At first, he thought it might be machine doubling, a common and usually worthless phenomenon. But the doubling was too clean, too symmetrical. He searched online forums, uploaded high-resolution images, and waited. The comments began pouring in. Experienced collectors were intrigued. This didn't look like mechanical doubling or die wear. It looked like a double die, an actual mint error caused during the hubbing process when the die itself is created. In modern coinage, such errors are rare, especially after the mint changed its die-making techniques in the late 90s to prevent exactly this sort of issue. So how had this one slipped through? The mystery deepened when a few others came forward with similar 2005 cents, all showing comparable doubling on the reverse and minor distortions on the obverse. But Ryan's specimen was the clearest, the cleanest, and when he submitted it for authentication, the result was undeniable. It was a double die obverse and reverse, an extremely rare combination in modern sense. Experts were baffled. The mint hadn't announced any such variation, and its internal records showed no known double dies for 2005 cents. Somehow, one of the working dies had either been improperly prepared or misaligned during hubbing, resulting in doubling on both sides of the coin. It was a once-in-a-decade anomaly. Collectors suddenly had a new modern rarity to chase. The 2005 double die cent became the subject of countless YouTube videos, articles, and coin convention discussions. Yet despite the attention, only a tiny number of confirmed examples have surfaced. Most 2005 cents are completely normal, which makes the verified error coins even more desirable. The real twist came a year after Ryan's find, when another coin surfaced, not from circulation, but from an unopened mint set. It had been sitting in a plastic sleeve for over a decade, untouched. When it was examined, it showed the same characteristics. That discovery proved that the error wasn't limited to worn dies or post-mint damage. It had occurred early in the striking process, perhaps from a single die pair that was quickly replaced. And those few coins that escaped during that brief window are now treasured rarities. Ryan's original coin, now slabbed and graded as MS66 red, is a benchmark for this variety. Its story inspired other young collectors to dig deeper, to look more closely at what they once thought was ordinary. It became more than a coin, it was a testament to curiosity and observation. It also reignited interest in mid-2000s Lincoln cents, a series long considered too recent to yield anything spectacular. Today, these 2005 double-die cents are among the most sought-after modern errors. They bridge the gap between the old-school thrill of copper coinage and the precision-driven modern mint era. Each one is a reminder that even with advanced equipment, human oversight and mechanical imperfections still find ways to leave their mark. And as for value? Well, Ryan's once overlooked coin that he almost spent at a convenience store is now valued between $32,000 and $82,000, depending on its grade, strike clarity, and surface quality.